Today, we're looking at the most horrific revenge deaths ever recorded. From the gym manager who turned a workout into a mechanical guillotine, to a mountain road rage trap where the car didn't just slip, it was driven off the cliff. It was August 22, 2017. The heat outside the strip mall in Mesa, Arizona, lingered long after sunset. Inside a small skincare clinic, the lights remained on. A phone mounted on a tripod faced a treatment chair, its red recording light steady as the room grew quiet. The spa owner, Angela Ruiz, 45, had built her spa into a modest but profitable 3-chair clinic. She had trained as a licensed esthetician after leaving retail management. She was disciplined, image-focused, and determined to grow her brand online. To maintain a minimalist look, she routinely transferred professional-grade acids into identical white refill bottles, removing manufacturer labels. She told clients it was for cleanliness and presentation. 6 months earlier, her assistant, Marisol Vega, 27, reported Angela to county regulators after discovering high-strength trichloroacetic acid stored without labeling and safety sheets. Marisol believed clients were at risk. Inspectors visited but issued only written recommendations. Angela fired Marisol 2 weeks later, stating she was insubordinate. Marisol filed a second complaint with the county within 2 weeks of her termination. Along with the complaint, she submitted dated photographs showing professional-grade acids stored in identical unmarked containers inside the clinic's supply cabinet. A county investigator acknowledged receipt and formally requested updated product logs and safety documentation from the spa. The case remained under administrative review, and no immediate enforcement action was issued. That Tuesday evening, Angela decided to film a promotional chemical peel demonstration on herself. The clinic was closed to clients, but one employee remained in the back office finishing inventory. Angela selected a white bottle she believed contained the neutralizer to pair with a 30% glycolic acid peel. Security footage later showed that 3 days earlier, former employee Marisol Vega, 27, had entered the clinic using a copied access code. Cameras recorded her inside the supply room for approximately 6 minutes. Investigators later determined she handled multiple product containers before leaving. Chemical peels require neutralization to stop the acid reaction. Angela applied the glycolic acid evenly across her cheeks and forehead. After several minutes, she reached for the white bottle she assumed was the neutralizing solution. The recording, later reviewed by investigators, shows her wiping the second solution across her face. Within seconds, her skin flushed deep red. The burning intensified rapidly, forcing her eyes partially shut. She stood abruptly, knocking the treatment tray to the floor, and moved toward the sink. Forensic testing later confirmed the bottle labeled neutralizer contained concentrated glycolic acid. The true neutralizing solution had been moved to a lower cabinet. The clinic's practice of storing professional-grade acids in identical unmarked bottles made visual identification impossible. Angela splashed water on her face repeatedly. The second application significantly increased the acid exposure, causing rapid blistering across her cheeks and neck as water and acid ran into her eyes, forcing them partially shut. In visible distress, she moved toward the rear hallway where a short set of tile stairs led to the staff area. The employee heard a crash. Angela missed a step while descending the stairs and fell forward, striking the right side of her head on a metal stair edge. Emergency services were called immediately. Paramedics arrived 9 minutes later and pronounced her dead at the scene. The medical examiner ruled the cause of death to be blunt force head trauma from a stair fall. The skull fracture caused fatal brain injury. The facial burns were contributing, but not independently fatal. Investigators reviewed earlier supply room footage and identified Marisol Vega handling the bottles. Fingerprints confirmed contact. She was charged with second-degree murder and product tampering. In April 2019, she was convicted and sentenced to 22 years in state prison. Regulators later required aesthetic clinics to keep original labeling and tamper-evident storage. The case was recorded as a homicide resulting from deliberate product tampering that led to a fatal fall. It was June 14, 2018. The sea off Barangay San Isidro in Batangas was calm at sunrise, the horizon flat and pale. Small motorized fishing boats drifted beyond the reef line, engines idling as fishermen prepared their nets. The morning air carried the smell of diesel and salt. Ramon Villarta, 48, had fished those waters since he was a teenager. He sold his catch directly at the public market, often pricing his fish lower than others to ensure quick sales. His neighbor, Ernesto Toto Ladera, 51, ran a similar operation. For years, they competed for the same buyers along the shoreline. The rivalry intensified when Ramon began offering discounted bulk prices to restaurant vendors. Toto accused him of destabilizing the local market and driving profits down for everyone. Arguments at the dock became routine. 6 months before the incident, the tension turned physical. Witnesses said Toto threw the first punch, but Ramon retaliated using a metal hook meant for hauling nets. Toto sustained a fractured jaw and broken ribs. He was hospitalized for weeks. No charges were filed, but the bitterness lingered. After recovering, Toto returned to fishing but avoided direct contact. Friends later testified that he often spoke about humiliation and the income he lost while injured. He began spearfishing again, saying it required fewer supplies and less fuel than net fishing. On the morning of June 14th, both men launched before sunrise, their boats drifting within a few hundred yards of each other near a shallow coral shelf known for grouper. Other fishermen later said tension was visible when they crossed paths, and witnesses noted Ramon lifting a net heavy with early catch while appearing to laugh. Around 7:20 a.m., Toto maneuvered his small motorized fishing boat closer, appearing to check his line, as witnesses heard raised voices over the water and later described a heated exchange tied to their ongoing rivalry and past conflicts. The distance between their boats narrowed to roughly 10 to 15 feet, as two nearby fishermen reported seeing Toto lift his spear gun and point it toward Ramon's vessel, though whether it was meant as a threat or something more could not be determined with certainty before the spear discharged. The steel-tipped arrow traveled across the short stretch of water and struck Ramon in the upper chest, slightly left of the sternum. The impact drove him backward against the side of his boat. The shaft pierced through his torso, protruding behind him. Blood spread quickly across his shirt and pooled on the wooden deck. Witnesses described Ramon attempting to push himself upright before collapsing forward. One fisherman started his engine and steered toward him, while another used his phone to call for help as nearby boats moved closer. Toto dropped the spear gun onto the floor of his small motorized fishing boat and did not fire again. Ramon was brought to shore within 15 minutes. Local community emergency responders initiated CPR while waiting for an ambulance, but he showed no signs of recovery. He was pronounced dead upon arrival at the provincial hospital. The autopsy determined the cause of death as penetrating chest trauma. The spear had entered between the ribs, punctured the left lung, and severed a major blood vessel near the heart. Rapid internal bleeding led to hypovolemic shock within minutes. Police recovered the spear gun and steel arrow from the scene. Multiple fishermen provided sworn statements describing the argument and the shot. Charged Ernesto Ladera, age 51, with homicide. In 2020, he was convicted and sentenced to 22 years in prison. The court ruled that firing a spear gun at close range constituted intentional deadly force, regardless of whether the act was pre-planned or driven by anger. It was August 12, 2016. The town gymnasium in Laredo, Texas, buzzed with the final night of the Miss Rio County pageant. Folding chairs lined the polished basketball court, and a temporary runway stretched 4 feet above the floor. Stage lights washed the plywood platform in harsh white glare, masking small gaps between panels. One of the contestants was Elena Cruz, 24. She was the reigning title holder. By day, she worked as a dental assistant. By night, she coached younger contestants hoping to follow her path. She was disciplined and competitive. Months earlier, during a regional qualifier, witnesses reported seeing her backstage holding sewing scissors near Marisol Vega's gown shortly before its inner seam was discovered cleanly cut. Though removed from the dressing area, she was not disqualified due to a lack of video proof. Marisol Vega, 22, had saved nearly a year to enter that competition. When her gown split under stage lights, she lost a scholarship tied to the crown. She confronted organizers, but without footage. No action followed. Humiliated, she withdrew from pageants for months and later testified she believed Elena had sabotaged her and destroyed her opportunity. The stage that August night had been assembled by volunteers. Rented risers were locked together and covered with a thin vinyl sheet stapled underneath. There were no guardrails along the sides. A decision, organizers said, allowed unobstructed camera angles. A seam where two risers met created a slight lip, less than half an inch high. Organizers noticed the uneven join during setup but deemed it stable. By the final round, witnesses later said the atmosphere between the finalists appeared tense. Both women had advanced to the last two contestants. Phones were raised across the audience as Elena stepped forward for her final walk. As she pivoted near the center seam of the runway, Marisol entered from stage right to join the lineup. Witnesses later stated that Marisol quickened her step. As they crossed paths, witnesses said Marisol placed her foot behind Elena's left heel, creating a brief pivot that interrupted her stride. Her trailing foot caught, and her upper body continued forward while her heel snagged against the uneven seam. The stumble lasted less than a second. Elena threw her arms outward in an attempt to steady herself. With no guardrails along the edge, she veered sideways. The vinyl surface shifted beneath her weight, and she fell off the 4-foot platform. Her head struck the metal corner of a lighting truss before hitting the hardwood floor. The impact echoed across the gymnasium. Audience members rushed forward as she lay motionless. A volunteer called 911. Paramedics arrived within 8 minutes. Elena was unconscious with heavy bleeding from the back of her head and irregular breathing. She went into cardiac arrest at the hospital and could not be revived. The autopsy found a skull fracture at the base of the head and severe brain injury from rapid internal bleeding. Fractures in the upper neck were consistent with a sideways fall. The cause of death was ruled blunt force head trauma from an elevated stage fall. Investigators reviewed footage and confirmed that Marisol's foot made contact behind Elena's ankle. Witnesses stated it did not appear accidental. Marisol Vega, 22, was charged with manslaughter and aggravated assault. In 2018, she was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 18 years in prison. The court ruled the act intentional, but not premeditated. The pageant committee added guardrails and non-slip surfaces to future events. The case was archived as a fatal fall caused by deliberate tripping during a public competition. Elena's title was awarded posthumously. It was October 3, 2016. Donner Summit, California, lay under low gray clouds as rain swept across the Sierra Nevada. The pavement was slick, visibility reduced, and traffic thinned as trucks prepared for the descent toward Reno. Leo Sanchez, 42, had driven freight across Northern California and Nevada for nearly 20 years. He lived in Sparks with his wife and 2 daughters. His logbooks were clean, his inspections consistent. Before dawn, he often idled his tractor briefly in his cul-de-sac while checking straps, airlines, and tire pressure before heading out. His next-door neighbor, Kyle Benton, 35, worked from home. Over the past year, they had clashed repeatedly. Kyle complained about engine noise and fumes. Leo maintained he was operating legally. The dispute escalated when Leo reported Kyle to their homeowners association for blocking the shared driveway during an argument. The association fined Kyle. Friends later said Kyle felt humiliated and blamed Leo for the penalty. On October 3rd, Leo left Sacramento hauling nearly 40,000 pounds of granite slabs secured upright on A-frame racks. His 2012 Freightliner Cascadia passed inspection, though the front left steer tire showed moderate wear. Rain advisories covered the Sierra corridor that afternoon. Donner's downhill stretch requires careful braking under heavy load. Wet pavement increases stopping distance and reduces traction. Phone location data later placed Kyle driving east toward Interstate 80 that evening. Highway cameras reviewed during the investigation showed his dark pickup within miles of Leo's truck before sunset. Around 6:40 p.m., Leo began the descent as rain intensified and spray trailed behind the trailer. Witnesses said a pickup followed closely, cut in front of the semi, and braked abruptly. Leo downshifted and used controlled braking to maintain stability on the wet grade. The pickup repeated the maneuver, forcing additional braking. Under repeated braking and heavy load, stress built in the worn front left steer tire. At approximately 6:47 p.m., the front left tire failed. Treads separated and debris scattered. The rim struck wet pavement, jerking the steering left. Leo attempted correction, but traction was lost. The trailer jackknifed. The truck crossed lanes, struck the guardrail, and tore through it. The rig plunged nearly 200 feet into a ravine. Granite slabs broke loose and crushed the cab on impact. The drivers called 911 immediately. Highway patrol and fire crews reached the ravine about 35 minutes later. The cab was crushed inward, and Leo was pinned beneath twisted metal and broken stone. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The autopsy ruled instantaneous death from catastrophic blunt force trauma, including a fatal skull fracture, multiple rib fractures that collapsed both lungs, and massive internal bleeding. Toxicology was negative. Investigators later placed Kyle Benton's pickup repeatedly cutting in front of Leo's truck before the crash. Vehicle data showed abrupt braking consistent with aggressive driving. Kyle was charged with vehicular manslaughter and reckless driving, convicted in 2018, and sentenced to 16 years in prison. It was November 18, 2017. Wind moved unevenly between the towers of Dubai Marina as a small group gathered on the rooftop of a 52-story apartment building. Below them, the harbor lights shimmered across dark water. Sloan Mercer, 29, worked as a freelance videographer. Base jumping was her outlet. She filmed her jumps and posted them online for a modest following. She organized night jumps for friends and handled the public image. Her former friend, Elena Mraz, 30, had once managed the logistics, weather tracking, landing calculations, rooftop access. Over time, Sloan began presenting their projects as solo efforts. Elena's name disappeared from posts. Small sponsorship deals went only to Sloan. The break became personal when Sloan began a relationship with Elena's longtime partner. Within months, Elena moved out and cut contact. On the night of the jump, Sloan secured rooftop access through a resident. The plan was a delayed canopy deployment with a landing arc toward a mostly empty plaza. The landing area was bordered by metal light poles and decorative fixtures. Wind gusts shifted between buildings. Elena arrived unannounced. Witnesses later said she appeared composed but distant. Sloan allowed her to stay. One member of the group suggested postponing due to crosswinds. Sloan declined. She checked her harness and stepped toward the edge. Elena approached as Sloan positioned herself. According to court testimony, a brief argument followed. When Sloan turned to focus on her exit, Elena shoved her between the shoulders. The push disrupted her stance. Instead of a controlled launch, Sloan stumbled forward off balance. Her body left the rooftop misaligned. Witnesses reported hearing her shout as she fell. During descent, she rotated unpredictably. An unstable exit reduces body control and delays proper positioning. At deployment altitude, she pulled. The canopy opened but inflated unevenly because of her off-axis body position and shifting wind. Instead of stabilizing above her, the canopy surged laterally. She drifted faster than planned toward the edge of the plaza. Witnesses on the plaza later said she appeared to pull at the toggles in an attempt to correct her path. The canopy responded slowly in the crosswind. She struck a metal lighting mast approximately 30 feet above ground. The impact collapsed the canopy and tore several suspension lines. With no lift remaining, she fell the remaining distance. Pedestrians called emergency services immediately. Paramedics arrived within 6 minutes. Sloan was unresponsive with severe head and chest trauma. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The autopsy determined the cause of death was massive blunt force trauma. Injuries included a skull fracture, spinal fractures, ruptured internal organs, and extensive internal bleeding consistent with high-velocity impact following canopy destabilization. Investigators reviewed rooftop security footage and phone location data, placing Elena at the scene. Multiple witnesses confirmed the shove. Elena Mraz was charged with murder under UAE criminal law. Prosecutors argued that pushing someone during a high-risk jump demonstrated intent to cause serious bodily harm. In 2019, she was convicted and sentenced to 25 years in prison. The case was recorded in court documents as a fatal fall precipitated by intentional interference during a recreational base jump. The building later restricted rooftop access and increased security. The case was recorded as a fatal fall following intentional interference during a rooftop base jump. It was March 14, 2016. The Community Fitness Center in Columbus, Ohio, moved through its usual Monday rhythm. The squat racks faced a mirrored wall, security cameras fixed above them in silent, steady angles. From the floor, nothing suggested that one lift would later become evidence. Jason Miller was 38 and worked in insurance claims processing for a regional firm. He was methodical and precise, the kind of man who documented conversations and saved receipts. After his divorce the previous year, he focused on rebuilding his health with the same discipline he applied to his job. He logged every workout in a small spiral notebook, tracked his calorie intake, and avoided unnecessary conversation on the gym floor. Structure gave him control. 3 months earlier, Jason filed a formal maintenance complaint after noticing loose hardware on one of the squat racks. He photographed the misaligned safety arm and emailed management with timestamps. The complaint triggered a corporate inspection and resulted in a written reprimand for the gym's floor manager, Derek Harlan, age 46. Harlan's quarterly performance bonus was temporarily frozen. According to later court filings, the atmosphere shifted after that review. Staff schedules changed, and Jason mentioned to a coworker that interactions with management had grown tense. He continued training there each evening. The rack Jason used that night had adjustable safety arms secured by removable steel pins. Maintenance logs showed replacement pins had been requested, but not yet installed. Surveillance footage showed Jason loading 3 45-pound plates on each side of the bar, totaling 315 pounds. Another member offered to spot him. Jason declined, as he routinely did. Jason unracked the weight and stepped back. He inhaled and descended. At the bottom of the lift, the bar drifted forward slightly. When he failed the ascent, he attempted to dump the bar backward onto the safety arms. The right arm held, the left dropped. The bar tilted violently. Nearly the entire load shifted forward across the base of his neck. Witnesses heard a sharp metallic impact as the left safety arm dropped against the frame, followed by a strained choking sound. The bar forced his chin to his chest and pinned him face down against the mat. His arms moved briefly but without coordination. 2 members rushed forward and lifted the unloaded end first while another stripped plates. The bar rolled free within seconds. Jason did not move again. A trainer called 911 at 7:42 p.m. Paramedics arrived 8 minutes later. CPR was initiated, but there was no spontaneous breathing or pulse to restore. Trial footage showed the left safety pin was not fully inserted before Jason lifted. Earlier video that evening confirmed it had been properly seated during another member's set. Between that lift and Jason's attempt, surveillance showed floor manager Derek Harlan lingering at the rack and manipulating the safety arm for several seconds, partially disengaging the pin before stepping away. Forensic analysis found no defect or metal failure. The pin slipped because it was improperly engaged. Text messages recovered from Harlan revealed anger over Jason's complaint and references to retaliation. The coroner determined Jason died from fractures of the C5 and C6 vertebrae that severed his spinal cord and stopped his breathing. In 2018, Harlan was charged with involuntary manslaughter and reckless homicide. A jury convicted him of reckless homicide, citing deliberate interference and foreseeable risk. He was sentenced to 9 years in state prison. The full sequence was recorded on security cameras and used as central trial evidence. The gym settled a wrongful death claim, implemented stricter inspection policies, and restricted staff from handling active equipment. The court described the case as a fatal act of workplace retaliation involving equipment tampering. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, click here